Hi, everyone. Welcome to the moon forecast for the full moon with an eclipse for November 19th of 2021. I'm Kendall Shawham with the Bohemian Tarot Girl. My co-host Amy with Wise Moon Energy is also here. Make sure that if you like our videos to go ahead and click like and subscribe. Amy, do you want to give a little intro about yourself?
Hi, I'm Amy Amonette. I am an intuitive energy coach, leader of women's moon circles. Just moon energy has been something that I've been really interested for a long time, and I started following and saw how it helped impact my life. And so we just get together and we talk about the upcoming moon energy, how you can flow with it and work with it and have it affect your life in a positive way.
And this one's going to be kind of a doozy. So
We've been leading up to this one for a long time. I
yeah,
know we've been talking about, wait for that eclipse in November. And there's a lot of reasons why this one is super significant and one to pay attention to. And so we're going to talk about that and give you ideas about where to look in your own chart to see how that will affect you, what you can expect, how long this eclipse portal will last. I mean, there's so much so much involved with this one.
it is. So where do you want to jump off? Do you want to talk about the eclipse part? Do you want to talk about the moon and what it's kind of trining with Jupiter?
Oh, let's good question.
I know.
So let's start with the moon first. This moon is a full moon in Taurus. And full moons happen when the sun and the moon are opposing each other on the chart. So the sun is in Scorpio, and exact opposite of that on the astrological wheel is the moon in Taurus. So they're happening at both 27 degrees of their sign. And that's towards the end of their signs there. We're going to be switching out of Scorpio season pretty soon. Sometimes, at least for me, that's kind of a relief. Scorpio season can feel pretty intense for some people. It's kind of going down, and if you watched our Scorpio new moon video, it kind of takes you down into the underbelly of things and brings up some of the darker aspects of self and maybe secrets that have been hidden. We're still navigating that for a little bit with this moon. And full moons are a time of releasing, maybe having some clarity on things. I feel like, I feel like so many of the moons this year have been leading up to helping each of us get more clear on ourselves, on what we want, what isn't working for us anymore. So this one is kind of a big culmination of all of that. And yeah,
It seems like it's kind of pushing us just for the alignment, to jump into this new kind of stage that we're setting here. And there's going to be a transition process. And I know, and once again, I know we keep talking about that we're transitioning, but it's like this constant continuation of growth. And you mentioned when we were talking earlier, and we were talking about the eclipse piece of it, and it's weird. We'll talk about how it is connected to the star. Is it Aggle? I'm really bad at saying that. Yeah. So can you tell us, you mentioned about this 2-year cycle with the eclipses, and looking back at that. Tell us more about that.
So the significant thing about this eclipse, it's going to be an almost full lunar eclipse in the sign of Taurus. Eclipses tend to happen in groups of the same sign for a period of time. And we've been navigating these eclipses up until now in the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius, because Gemini has been in the North Node. And the North Node is kind of a position of kind of what you need to work on or what you need to focus on. And it lasts about approximately 2 years, the sign will stay in a node, or a year and a half about. Um, this eclipse that's happening in Taurus is the first eclipse in Taurus that we've had since it was in North Node Taurus, since I think the last time we had Taurus, Scorpio, North Node eclipses was from November of 2002 until October of 2004. So if you're old enough to remember back to that time, you can kind of look back to those dates and see what transpired for you or what major shifts happened. Eclipses are portals, and they are gateways, and they come in and they are karmic, they're fated. These are kind of like set points in your timeline that are set up to help you transition or grow in a certain area of your life. So with this eclipse in Taurus, we are starting a new cycle in a new part of your chart, in a new area of your life, that's going to last until, let me look at it here. Starts on November 19th of 2021. It is going to last until October 28th of 2023. So this is not going to be short-term energy. There's like little gateways between between the eclipses that you'll like kind of go through, but it's like I worked on the Columbia River for a time, and on the Columbia River, I believe there's like 7 locks and dams you have to go through between Astoria, Oregon, and Lewiston, Idaho. And for some reason, I'm just getting this image of that, is that each one you go into a space and it raises the water up until you're level with the next portion. And there was like 7 different gateways that you did this through, 7 locks and dams that you did to transverse the river, because it's elevating, raising an elevation. And so these eclipses are kind of like that. You'll have a gateway between this one and the next eclipse in the same sign, and it's going to elevate you a little bit more. And then the next one is going to elevate you a little bit more until you get to the end of this cycle and you're in a completely different place from where you started. It's a big transition, but it's also not one that's necessarily going to happen instantly. But you're going to realize at the end of it that you are definitely not where you started from. To find out how this is going to affect you, I would recommend pulling up your astrological chart. You're going to need to know your time of day that you were born to get the most accuracy, because that'll show you the houses. And then look where Taurus and Scorpio are in your chart and the houses those are in, and that can give you an idea of which parts of your life may be the most affected. You can also look and see what planets in your natal chart are in those 2 houses, because that can give you an idea of kind of like how that's going to also affect you. So for example, so we were talking about this, I was really curious about what was happening for me and how this transitioned at that period of time in my life in 2002 to 2003. So my sun is in Taurus, but it's in the 8th house, which is interesting because that's usually ruled by Scorpio. And Scorpio for me is in the 2nd house, which is usually ruled by Taurus. So it's a weird like positioning there. But 2nd house is usually things like your possessions and your physicality. And then you'll have the 8th house, which is like transformation. So for me, back in 2002, I had a major event that kind of like propelled me into a whole different way of thinking about my life. Um, and it was the start of me uh, stepping more into myself. Like, I went to school, I became a massage therapist, I started my journey looking into spirituality and energy work. And that in turn, like, pushed me through to set myself up for the rest of my career up until this point. So it was a huge personal transformation in some way that could apply to you in many different ways. It could affect your family, it could affect your location, it could affect your spiritual growth. So just take a look at your chart and see where it's most affecting you. Do you know yours? Or
No, I
like,
don't know mine. I'd have to pull it up and look.
can you remember like 2002 to 2004?
I should be able to. Let me look at LinkedIn. Hold on.
Yeah.
It'll probably tell me what I was doing.
There's so much that's going to be happening with this moon besides this eclipse. Like, it's not just this eclipse that's happening, but that is a major event and something to pay attention to, because like we said, it is a portal. It's going to transform some area of your life. It's going to transform you, and all of the energy that we've been dealing with these moons and these planets is kind of giving you a closer look and a realization of what is fitting for your life. What do you really want? What do you value? What is worth taking with you? um did you have a chance to check?
I did. Well, I was just thinking, it would have put me 2002. I would have been right out of high school, in between that time. And I was kind of working. I also did a lot of like traveling. I spent a lot of time like snowboarding and just having fun. I don't,
Sanity.
I had
It
a,
was
I had a
to
pretty like significant relationship at that time. So,
that could be
um,
a fact.
yeah, I don't
Kind of
know.
having some fun in your life
Yeah,
and
maybe I just need more
that
fun.
romance. That would be nice.
That would be real nice.
um yeah, speaking of romance, the other thing that is happening right at this moon is that on November 5th, so right before, a couple weeks before this moon, Venus has moved into Capricorn. And we talked a little bit about that in the last video. Venus usually stays in a sign about a month, right?
Yeah, this is going to be unusual how long it's staying in.
Yeah, so Venus is in Capricorn and it's going to go retrograde. So it's actually staying in Capricorn from,
It was like March, wasn't it?
yeah, November 5th to March 6th.
Uh-huh,
We
which is crazy.
extended stay in Capricorn. And Capricorn it definitely has a serious side to it. Like, it doesn't necessarily sugarcoat things. It looks at things very realistically. It's very practical. It wants you to get serious about things. Uh, it doesn't Capricorn energy, I kind of think of it as almost like a bullshit detector. Like, they will see right through the truth of things and they're not going to sugarcoat or put up with um frivolity. Like, there's no room in that in Capricorn for being frivolous. um it's very straightforward, and I think that this is significant right now because as we're getting clear on what we want, Capricorn is coming in and kind of giving us the legs and the stamina and the courage to finally go after what it is that we want for ourselves. It's willing to put in the work. It's willing to make the hard decisions. It's willing to put the self first. Um, Whereas there may have been, and I feel like for quite a lot of this year, like, things have kind of been unclear. Like we've been getting bits and pieces of information like
Totally.
here and there, and getting like little inklings of like, well, maybe I want this or maybe I want that. And right now, with this eclipse coming in and Capricorn, Venus moving into Capricorn, and Venus is going to be trining Uranus, which is all about, change and revolution. I feel like we have been getting the kind of groundwork set energetically to finally start taking action and moving into where we feel is best for us to go. Like instead of just thinking about it, it's going to be time to move in whatever part of your life you're feeling that something needs to change or something isn't working, or maybe it's something you've been thinking about for a long time of, work you want to do. And now you're getting the signal and the um, sense of like bravery and stamina and nudge that this is the time to really go after it. So that's, I think, I don't know. I was really kind of hesitant about Venus and Capricorn for so long because it can also call you out on stuff. It can also make you see, hey, these things in my life aren't working for me anymore, and I'm gonna have to do something about it. Like there's really no excuses for it. And that can, if you're not wanting to be faced with some harder truths, perhaps, especially in your relationships or the people in your life, Capricorn may be a little tough. It's like tough love. I always think of Capricorn as kind of being the tough love father figure of the zodiac. Like it wants the best for you, but it's gonna tell you when you're being stupid. So yeah.
How do you see it playing in with, okay, so we're going to be in this first part, right? And then what is it? December 19th is when it goes retrograde. So what do you see? Yeah. Do you see like something that should be maybe reviewed before we kind of move into this retrograde pattern? Because it's really going to, like, here we're going to start. And then we'll hit the retrograde, and then that ends in February. And then we have another chunk of time afterwards. What are you seeing with that?
I think that, well, especially when Venus goes retrograde, I tend to think of it as a time of um, being able to reassess and reevaluate and kind of slow things down. I think that there's going to be some major realizations that happen in the, like, especially right around this eclipse. With it being in Scorpio, Scorpio and Taurus, they're opposing energies. They do have very similar energies, but they work on very different levels. And we talked a little bit about that the last moon. So if you haven't watched that, I would encourage you to go back because it's a good like starting point for this energy. Taurus is, I tend to think of that as kind of like the Earth Mother archetype. It wants to build, it wants to grow, it wants to create a beautiful, landscape around itself. It wants to be abundant and nurturing. And then you have Scorpio, which is a very protective energy. It can be also be very secretive. It can knows that growth happens kind of in the darker spaces. It's not afraid of looking at some of the harsher and not so comfortable aspects of self. So where Taurus wants everything to be beautiful, like Scorpio understands that can also be beauty in some of the darker aspects of things.
Yeah.
And transformation. I mean, it's a hugely
Oh, yeah,
transformative.
for sure.
But with it being very protective of self and secretive, you may find that there have been things that either have been hidden from you or that you have been keeping from other people that you can no longer keep secret anymore. You may come to realizations that you've kind of been sweeping things under the rug, hoping they'd go away. And then all of a sudden you realize these things are not things that I can keep sweeping under the rug. These things are not things that I can continue putting up with if I want to move forward in this direction. Um, and so there can be shakeups in your relationships. It can also open things up to more conversations. Capricorn is not afraid of having the hard conversations about things. Um, that can open doorways to a lot of healing. It can also open doorways to maybe um, being ready to let go of what's not serving anymore. And ultimately, that's what full moons are for. We use full moon energy because, the moon goes from being completely full to slowly going back to where the moon is dark. And as that decreases, the energy of what we're releasing goes with it. So it's a good time to kind of look at what in your life is not working and what in your life you want to change and what in your life have you outgrown, so that you can start releasing that and letting it go, especially with the eclipse. It's going to amplify it. Not only that, but we have Jupiter squaring both the sun and the moon at the same time. And Jupiter energy, it amplifies everything it comes in contact with. So it can feel like a very intense, an intense energy with this eclipse that comes in where you're suddenly seeing both sides of something and you can't deny it anymore. Like it's in your face, it is big, it is, ready to be, you're ready to act on it. It can be kind of impulsive. I mean, that's just, but it also has a lot of luck to it. But it's going to be, it could be shining its light, on both the sun and the moon. Where, Jupiter's kind of the it's kind of the magnifying glass. Like, if it's something good, it's going to make it look even better. And if it's something bad, it's going to make it look 10 times worse. It can go either direction. And also it's kind of how you choose to view things. I think a lot of times perspective comes into it. We can look at there's a saying or a quote. It's something: you walk into an empty room and you sit down with a cup of tea and you decide if that is, peaceful or lonely. Like for some people that could be a really lonely idea. And for some people that could be like, thank God I finally have some time to myself and this is wonderful. And so your personal interpretation of what's happening at this time is really going to come into play and be amplified. So it's also a good time, I think, to get into a place where you can sit with yourself and check in and take stock of where you want to go, what is feeling right, what you're not willing to tolerate anymore, and what has kind of what you've outgrown. There's a lot of growth that has happened over the last few months, and sometimes when you are having a growth spurt, like you have to throw away the old shoes. They're going to be uncomfortable and they're not going to fit and you're not going to want to wear them anymore. And it doesn't mean they're bad shoes and it doesn't mean they didn't serve their purpose, but you're no longer fitting that space.
Exactly.
So
I like that. How are you feeling as far as with the eclipse portion of it aligning with Algol, that star? And that star is kind of, it's defined by like what I found was like the most destructive star in the heaven. So, there was that. And it was also the eclipse trines with Pluto. How are you feeling that is coming into play? Is that more of like a collective
Pluto.
energy, what we're going to see play out? Or is that something that you can, is there potentially like some sort of catalyst that might come about because of that?
There are definitely things to be aware of. And I know there's a lot of astrologers who have been very concerned with the star Algol being involved in this, um, because it does have a tendency to bring about a destructive energy with it. Um, I don't necessarily have predictions on how that can happen. I do think it is something that we should be aware of, because you should be aware of energy. Um, and especially
100%.
Pluto trining. I mean, Pluto is one of the rulers of Scorpio, and it is about transformation, and it is about death. And it is, I mean, it could very well, with this star that is about destruction and with Pluto being involved, it could be a personal thing, or it could be a collective thing. I mean, we're all kind of under the same, and we're all under the same stars. um, it's just something to be aware of, that there could be some area of your life or some part that starts seeing maybe a death of some sort. And I don't mean necessarily literally, but it is something to be aware of. The other thing that I think is important to be aware of when you're dealing with energies that tend to have kind of a more negative connotation to it is that nothing comes through that isn't meant to bring you to a better place. And I know that when there's kind of some darker things happening, or a lot of grief or trauma, or it's really hard to look at it that way. And I don't want to seem like I'm sugarcoating anything or like being all light and love, because that's not the reality. But sometimes things are catalysts, um, for something that needs to shift. And, um, there's sometimes experiences that you have to go through in order to get to the next place. And it's a process, and it's part of life. That's why we're here. We're human. I mean, nobody gets to escape some things. I'm not saying that this is going to affect everybody in a negative way, or that it's going to be doom and gloom, or it's going to be the apocalypse. Um, because I'm not an astrologer, but I have heard astrologers who are concerned about this aspect. And so I do think it's something to have an awareness about, so that if something does happen in your realm, that you're not caught off guard.
I like that. I mean, and that's a good point too, is, what you mentioned, like it's not necessarily something horrible, it's something meant to happen in your life that propels you. Um, but I definitely think, being aware of it is super important, because I hate being caught off guard, and knowing
And
that energy is out there and there's potential is really important, to have that kind of, understanding that there is some potential for this type of energy coming up. So
a lot of endings are really bittersweet. I
yeah,
mean, there are things that people don't want to let go of, or that they don't want to have exit their life.
yeah.
Um, but sometimes that's,
That's what
the
pushes
way
you forward,
to
right?
go. Mhm.
Yeah. I did pull a card. I got the judgment card. Um, major arcana, obviously. And, there is you seeking your higher self. But this also to me talks a lot about you making some sort of not radical, but life-changing decision. And that you really need to use your intuition. So if you're called to make that choice, and it's sort of that overwhelming decision, really use your intuition as well as your judgment. Make sure that those two pieces are coming together to form your decision upon what you're doing. So, and then trust in the universe.
I think that that's the perfect card,
Mhm.
for this, because I think that there is going to be a lot of surety around what you decide to do with this eclipse and what you decide to do between now and the next eclipse in Taurus. We do have one more eclipse that is happening in the Gemini Sagittarius realm, and that is December. Do we say December 4th or December 9th? I can't remember. It's the
I thought you
beginning of,
said,
I
I
think
thought you
it's
said
the
four.
4th.
Yeah.
Yeah, so December 4th, we have one more eclipse in Gemini Sagittarius axis, and that is going to close out that cycle. So we're starting a new cycle now with this full moon eclipse. But we're in that transitioning period where we're closing out the last cycle. So it's a very interesting time. We're
It
going to be
is.
taking different parts of our life and closing out other chapters. So, you know, it can be exciting. I look back at what happened this last eclipse cycle, and it changed my whole life from that point on. It started with, 2 weeks before that first eclipse, almost exactly 2 weeks before that first eclipse in 2002 in Taurus, my dad passed away suddenly, and that eclipse season started, and that event like catapulted this whole transformation. So yeah, there's endings, but there's also big beginnings that happen. There can be things that are really uncomfortable, but they also can propel you into more of who you are. So, take it as take it for what it is, recognize it, look at what is trying to be shown to you, and then follow the next step as to what feels best for yourself in your life. It can be really easy to get caught up in, especially with Venus being such a big player right now, with our attachments to other people. But ultimately, it's time to take a look at, yes, we are attached to other people. We can't get, we're, community creatures. We're meant to be in relationships. We're meant to interact with other people. But I think this is a really pivotal time to make sure that the people you're traveling with are the people that are supporting your growth and your vision for yourself and what you're meant to do and where you're meant to go. And to start being honest with yourself if that's not aligning. So
I love that. Thank you, Amy, for I feel like it was like almost like a pep talk for this full moon.
I hope so. I wasn't sure, but I wasn't necessarily prepared to be on video today, because yesterday was the anniversary of my dad's death, 19 years ago. So I am glad that the message that I wanted or felt needed to come through, I hope that it did come through and inspire some of you all. So,
Well, I always appreciate your messages. So it benefits me. So thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again. Please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me at the Bohemian Tarot Girl on Instagram or Facebook. Amy is at Wise Moon Energy. I'll let you tell them about your place. Yeah.
Yep, Wise Moon Energy on Facebook. We have a great page going on there. We also have Wise Moon Magic Circle. If you'd like to kind of interact more with other people. So
awesome. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you at the new moon. So bye, everyone.